Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about being a foster parent. That's something that people really don't like to venture into. That's kind of like a taboo in some people's eyes, just in that fostering system. The people have a bad taste in their mouth. But luckily for me, I have a special guest on my show named DJ that is going to break those barriers and break those taboos and actually give us her personal experience with this, taboo that we all think about in some way, shape, or form. So let me fully introduce you. DJ, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Well, thank you. My name is DJ Stutz. I'm actually the host of the podcast Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting. I have been a foster mom and I adopted out of the foster care system our youngest daughter. We got her when she was 12 and she is 27 now. So I have family members who have fostered and then adopted, and friends, a lot of friends, because you wind up when you do fostering or when you adopt out of the foster system, it's a very different thing than when you're adopting a baby, although there are some similarities. And we could talk about that later on if you want, but there's something that foster parents understand each other. And so when things go awry, no one's sitting there and judging you. They're just saying, yup, that happens. So there we are. So the first little guy that I fostered was a little boy, and he was about, I don't know, not quite a year and a half. And when I got him, I wasn't expecting to actually foster. It was just kind of thrown in on my lap. We knew the birth mom's sister, and they knew us and knew what kind of a family we were. And instead of having him go into regular foster, they wanted to do it's like a family friend kinship kind of thing. So we actually got him before we were certified as a foster family. We were certifying as we had him. So that was kind of a very weird circumstance. And so, but we wound up getting certified and we had him, and cutest little thing. His birth mom didn't even know his right birthday. We had to get his birth certificate to get the right birthday. She was off, and she was a drug addict. And when we got her, she had been arrested selling drugs. And this little guy was in a back bedroom, completely naked, in a crib covered in feces and all other gross stuff. So in Las Vegas, this was when we lived in Las Vegas. We lived there for 20 years. And he, so they got him, and Las Vegas has a shelter just for kids that are going through something like that. It's a special shelter. And so I wound up going to pick him up, and they were apologizing. All we had were girl clothes, his size. We didn't have anything that fit him. And okay, so I took him home in this little pink frilly outfit and went to the store, bought some clothes for him. And we had a lot of friends who were like, oh, let me give you my old stuff. My kid's outgrown this, whatever. So it's really important, I think, when you're even thinking about going into foster, in assessing your social circle. Who do you have as a foundation for you that you can go to, that they are willing to help, they're willing to step in and maybe provide you with some things. Once you are certified as a foster parent, you can have almost no notice. They can call and say, we have a little guy, if you're willing to take him or maybe them, we will be there in a half hour. And so you don't have a lot of notice. So it's really nice if you've got, a group of people that will be there for you. And in a lot of cities, there are support groups for foster parents. And so what I would do is, even before I would even start the process, I would go to some of their events and meetings and stuff. They're I've never heard of anyone that isn't open to someone who's thinking about fostering, but they're not a foster yet, coming to their events. And you can ask a lot of questions, and then you're already starting to build those relationships with people who will understand what you're going through and will help you be there, help you understand, why do I have to do this, or what steps am I missing to get certified, all of that stuff. They are more than happy to help you. They're a great group of people from my experience.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah. Anyway, this little guy wound up being my nephew. My sister adopted him. There's a story behind that, but I won't. And so then later I got a little girl, and she was about 10, I guess. And here's another thing to think of too, is I'm little white mommy, right? And I don't know if you can see, but my hair is very, very straight. Doesn't hold a curl much at all. This little girl was racially mixed. And I had no idea what to do with her hair, and that's a big deal
Yeah,
for these little girls.
it
And
is.
my next door neighbor, we were really good friends, and she was African American. And so I took her over to my neighbor, and I'm like, teach me. I don't know what to do. And
Yeah.
my friend had all boys. And so she was thrilled
Oh,
to
oh,
do the hair and do the little girl stuff. And so we were able to get some of that done. But if you do get a child that is of a different racial background than you are, or sometimes they're even maybe the same, but if I have like super thin straight hair, there are white blondes that have super thick curly hair.
yeah,
And especially with girls, if you get a girl, getting their hair, it's a big deal. And so
it
don't
is.
just try and push your way through. Go ahead and talk to someone, or go to a beauty salon that does hair for that,
Yeah.
group. And I have never found anything but just, oh, I'm so glad you're asking. And the foster kid, well, and we're talking about girls specifically here, they feel so much better when their hair is done right. They feel better about themselves.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that I would suggest to you. So you might be fostering, and in some states you have to have a special certification to foster newborns. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I
then
didn't know
older
that.
kids. Yeah, and it varies from state to state. So you're going to want to check, if you do want to foster newborns, you're going to want to check with your state and see what the requirements are, because they're not the same from state to state.
Okay, that makes sense. I have a couple questions though. With everything that you said, of two things really sparked my interest. One is, how long does the fostering process to get your license actually take? And two, um when you get a call saying that there's a potential for fostering, does anybody actually ever say no? And if they do say no, do they get dinged by saying no?
It depends on how often you're saying no. And again,
Okay.
that's going to depend on the state that you're in. But if you, like one time I got a call and they said, we've got this little boy and he was in the car, his mom was buying drugs, blah, blah, blah. Well, we were 8 hours away from heading from Las Vegas to the ocean in Oregon, a little place called Gold
Oh,
Beach.
wow.
Yeah, and we were going on vacation, and 8 hours, and that, I mean, this was in the evening, they called, we were gonna leave at the butt crack of dawn, to go, and I just had no way of getting everything ready that I would need to and go on vacation. And so I did say no, but that didn't stop me from getting other
Are
foster
they
situations.
are they a limit, or are there no, is there a limit for how many like fostering children that someone can foster? Because it sounds like they kind of just rush it and kind of just like put you in like some panel, and if you're on the list and they call you and they go down the list and they just stick kids with as many people. I mean, how many like kids have you gotten all together, like fostering, not adopting wise?
I only fostered one at a time. That was
Oh,
me.
okay.
But it depends on how big your house is, what other children are in the house already, whether they're your DNA kids or other foster kids, Do you have the setup? Do you have a bed available for them? And so it just really depends on, you can put some parameters in of what you are willing or not willing to take. You can say
Okay.
no one over 16 or no one over 10. And sometimes they'll push that and they'll say, oh, well, we've got this little guy, he's 5, but his brother or his sister, is this age. And so they can try and push it that way. And they will often try to keep siblings together if they can. I've heard of groups of couples getting as many as 6 siblings at one time. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups a little bit.
No, you're
Yeah,
fine. That's a lot.
that's a lot. And they did it. And the family that I know, they took them on, and they didn't have any kids of their own. They weren't able to have kids. And so they were thrilled to have children in the home. And we can talk a little bit about the adventures in a little bit that occur with foster,
Yeah,
opting out of foster.
because how do they technically saying graduate out of foster? Do they just reach 18 and then get thrown into the world, basically?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They
Or
are
they just
thrown
jump
to the
around
wolves.
from home to home until, I mean, because they're not wanted, or I mean, how does, I mean,
Yeah.
because I hear stories, and I watch TV shows, and maybe the TV shows and movies don't portray it to be as how reality is, but it seems like when a host family, the fostering family, no longer is compatible with that child, they just tell the state, and the state just picks them up and send them to the next family, and
Yeah,
they just get jumped around from family to family. Does that
that
sound
can
right?
happen. My daughter that we adopted, so like I said, we got her when she was 12. Her birth mother had abandoned her at that children's shelter I was just telling you about in Las Vegas, and said, I will kill myself if you make me keep her. And this was 5 days before her 5th birthday. So she was 12 years in foster care with 11 different placements and 2 other failed adoptions when we got her. So you do hear stories like that. My daughter's a living proof of that.
Yeah.
And but then you also hear, but it's not always, I don't ever want to say that a foster parent was, selfish or cruel in having a child move on. So sometimes you'll get foster kids that will actually hurt some of the other kids, whether they're foster or DNA kids. You can get some foster kids that are just so disruptive
Yeah.
that it really isn't compatible with your
Mhm.
family. And so I don't ever blame a foster parent for saying, this was more than we bargained for. Maybe he or she needs to move on. And my sweet little Noelle, did have some issues with her life previous to being fostered. And then from every time that there was, we need to move on, there was another abandonment issue in her mind, even though that may have been what was best for the family that she was with.
Yeah. I mean, as
Yeah,
a child in that predicament, I could only assume all of the things that could be running in that child's mind. It's kind of
yeah,
like it's sad, it really
yeah.
saddens me, how it just happens. I mean, because I have my own children, I feel like I can never just abandon them and just leave them with someone else. For me, I feel like they're close to my heart, but that's different because I know mentally not everybody's made to be a parent. You know what I
Right,
mean? And I think that's
right.
something that's not understood and not really talked about either.
Mhm.
This facade of everybody needs to have a kid and get married and have that typical picket fence life. I mean, it's not for everybody. It's really not
Right.
for everybody. And I think when you deal with difficult children, do you just try to be patient with them, try to see where they're coming from, because I feel like that's the only real way to do that.
Yeah. And we did, and you have accessibility now to therapists, to psychologists or psychiatrists, doctors. So if you working with a foster child, you have access to Medicaid. Yeah, it's Medicaid. And so they pay for, from braces, although the doctors that tend to accept Medicaid are often not the best,
Yeah.
because they pay so low. Medicaid pays almost nothing for their
Mhm.
services. So when we got Noelle, she had braces and the orthodontist took them off and it was horrible. It didn't work. When we moved up to Colorado, and I'm not sure what the age difference is. She was an older adoption, so her Medicaid would stay with her even though we adopted her until she was 18. And so I took her into another orthodontist and said, "What are you thinking here?" And she says, "This is horrible. This is a terrible job. I'm embarrassed." And this was a really well-known, she had a big clientele.
Yeah.
And so she submitted and they denied her. They said, "Oh, she's already had braces. And so then I also saw the dentist. So it was the orthodontist and a dentist in the same office. So I was taking her in for a dental appointment 6 months later. And the dentist was like, "I got to go get Dr. Lee." So she came in and looked, she goes, "This is ridiculous." And so she applied again, took pictures, sent x-rays, and then they finally approved another round with braces. And this time it was with, a really good doctor that knew what she was doing. And you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So it's really hard sometimes to get, even though they're on Medicaid and you have access to all of that, you really do need to talk to who they are seeing. And, without breaking patient confidentialities, you can get a feel for what kind of a person that is. And do they really care? Are they doing this because they're very kind, thoughtful people and they realize I'm making money over here, I want to do the best for this child? Or is there something else going on? So so we had trouble with therapists, we had trouble with psychiatrists, and all of that until we started moving her out of some of the Medicaid situations and getting her in with like our family doctor and our
Yeah.
stuff. So you kind of have to really be aware. That's something to really think about as well, is who's going to see. So if you already have a family doctor for you and your DNA kids, you might have a conversation with them ahead of time and saying, "We're thinking of fostering. Do you take Medicaid? Do you, because a lot of times health insurances won't take a foster kid because they say, well, they've got Medicaid. You don't, you can't put them on your family plan because they've got Medicaid." And so you just want to make sure that you're checking all of this out. And it does help if you have you're never going to have all the answers because something's going to come up and you're like, "Oh, never thought of that."
Yeah.
So, but get as many answers as you can. Like I said, going to a group where there is support for other foster parents before you foster is a great idea to get a lot of those questions answered for your state. Because again, a lot of the rules and regulations and how things move are different from state to state.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense why it would be different for each state. And I totally understand the insurance industry. It's
Mhm.
it's it's a corrupt system, I swear. I hate it so much because it's so corrupted. The way that they have it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's not the
Well, and I've
topic of
got
today.
cousins that are doctors and I have a brother that's an orthodontist in Oregon. And, and they've talked about how, when they want to do things and the insurance, but this is what's best for the child, or this is what's best for the patient,
They don't care.
yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, they
So,
don't care.
yeah.
I guess my next question is, do you think there's a specific age group that's mostly needed for adopting and fostering versus another? Because it seems like a lot of the times that people only want to foster and adopt newborns because it's
Mhm,
a fresh slate, and they can really start like their foundation as a
mhm.
newborn, like if they were adopting a puppy. So do you think older ones are more so needed than teens versus the newborns?
Well, and that's why Russ, my husband's Russ, that's why Russ and I did adopt an older child. So I had 4 kids and our youngest had just graduated from high school. And I mean, we were over the finish line, right?
Yeah, way
We
over.
went back for another race. And but our thinking was we're older. The little kids, they get adopted easily. And the older kids don't. And we'd had experience, with some of our foster kids. And so we decided to adopt, an older child. But, even if you adopt a younger child, even if you adopt them, like you're there for the birth and you're taking that child home, I have a friend who did that. The mom was only 14 years old, the birth mom, and she knew this wasn't right to me. A person who gives a child up for adoption is nothing short of an absolute hero. That's got to be a really tough decision to make, a hard thing to do. And yet you are giving this child an opportunity, that you never would. Or even if it was an unwanted pregnancy, what a hero you are to take, give this kid a chance. You don't have to be the mom, but you can give this kid a chance. There are families who are literally waiting for years to get a child. And so anyway, you're going to get me off on another topic, but I really appreciate and I admire women who are strong enough and loving and caring enough to give a child to a family that's settled and good. But even with that, they took this baby home and loved him and whatever. There were no drugs, no issues, but he still struggled in his teen years. And then even as a 4-year-old, he was throwing fits that were like none other. He would actually poop in his bedroom and rub the feces on the wall, and that's with the newborn. So, it just depends on the kids that you get and what's going on. With teenagers, you're definitely going to have trust issues, probably attachment disorders. My Noelle has a reactive attachment disorder, although she's just doing so well right now. I'm so proud of her. And she's married, she's got her own little boy, and she's just got this great work ethic. She's working really hard and contributing and taking care of the family. And so I'm just so proud of her. But boy, was it a road getting her there. So don't go in with the idea that, oh, it's all going to be roses and oh, if I just love them enough, if I'm there for them enough. There are kids that if they've been through the system for any amount of time, they learn to take what they can get from anyone they can. And
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for being honest and being real about that, because my sister, like I said before we started recording, she's starting this process with a foster child, and she takes him on the weekends whenever she can. And he's a handful. He's 15 years old. He's been in the system for a while, and he's one that likes to run away and likes to claim suicide if he doesn't get his way. And he's a handful. And my sister, that's what she's going off of. She says that she's doing this because she thinks that all he needs is some love and some guidance and someone to be there for him, and then he'll be a better person. And I'm just like, it doesn't work like that. It's like spraying water on a flower and expecting it to already grow. Like it doesn't work like that. But I think if you're going in that mentality, I mean, I'm assuming that you're going to have a hard time actually facing the real facts of reality, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well, no, I don't think so. I know so. And so now, are there kids though who come in and they're like, oh, thank you so much for adopting me, and I so appreciate you, and I'm going to work hard to honor you and our name and whatever. Yeah, there are once in a while. Once in a while, you'll get a kid like that. But the majority of them they've gone through trauma that we can not even imagine.
Yeah.
We can't even fathom it. And so We can't expect them to process relationships and information in the same way that you or I would,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And so, and here I was, I mean, I worked for the Division of Family and Youth Services in Clark County, which is the Las Vegas area, for 16 of the 20 years. I worked part-time. I also taught school, and so I would think, okay, I've got it. I know. I was a parenting facilitator, for heaven's sakes, you know, and I worked with parents who were having struggles. And so I thought, yeah, we got it. We know what we're doing. And she taught us a lesson in humility.
Oh,
You
I
know,
believe it. I believe it. People don't realize that you're dealing with a human being. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with an animal, you're not dealing with a sofa, you're not dealing with something that doesn't have real emotions. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you're not
yeah,
dealing with a fish in a bowl. Like you're dealing with an actual human being that
yeah,
thinks in its own way, that perceives in its own way and acts in its own way of thinking,
yeah.
and I think people forget that. They think that they could be like robots and they can just control them. And
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest things that I don't like is that that people have that perception of other human beings like they're controllable. Like, no, we really are not that controllable. We are very uncontrollable and we are very spontaneous. Like each human being is spontaneous. And I think
Mhm.
once you're able to adapt, and I think that's the biggest quality that you need to have when you're being a foster parent is adaptability. Like, are you adaptable and do you have that understanding of you don't know what you're going to open in this box,
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. But I guess to start wrapping up the show because it's going to cut us off soon,
Oh,
what would be some great advice that you can possibly give myself, or that I can give my sister, or anybody that may be listening that may be thinking about this? I know you've been already giving us some great advice, because this really has got me thinking to the point where I need to sit my sister down and be like, hey, let's really think about this.
mhm. Well, and two,
What would be
maybe if
your
she moves
advice?
forward, you know, because it really does affect the whole family. When we adopted, it affected my adult kids who were out of the home. It affected my sister who lived close to me and who adopted my first foster child. And, it affected everybody, our friends and our everything. And so I would say, be sure that we're being really open as we go through the process. And as you talk about it, you're going to notice the people who are kind of like, ugh, or the people who are like, I want to be there for you. I want to, and you're going to start building that foundation so that you can be cared for. I mean, it's hard enough raising kids when they're your DNA, right? And you
Yeah.
get exhausted and you think mama needs a break, you know? And so when the problems and the behaviors are so much bigger than the ones that you're used to seeing in your family, and um, you're gonna need that break. You're gonna need to be able to set back. I would make sure that you have a therapist for you and your spouse. I would make sure that you have a therapist that's available for your children, your DNA kids, and then one that's available for your foster or adoptive child. And just realize that these kids come with their own, they've been solving problems for themselves their whole life.
Yeah.
They've been figuring out how to get food, how to find a place to sleep, they've been figuring all of these out. My Noelle remembers sleeping under a bench in a park, and all of that. So her outlook, so just realize that they come to you with very different experiences, very different attitudes and ideas about faith, about what family is, about drugs and alcohol and sex and education. Most of these kids, I will say, come with a very bad attitude about education. And you may have to realize that, okay, how are we going to get this so that you will be able to be a contributing, self-sustaining, independent adult with what we have? And so I
Yeah.
think basically find out where your child is emotionally, spiritually, um, socially, all of those things. Quit worrying about the kid you want them to be. Look at who they are, and then let's figure out what are the next steps and what is the direction they see that they want to go. And when they feel like they're not fighting you so much, you're still going to have problems, you're going to have problems with your DNA kid too.
Yeah.
But no matter what, you're still going to have problems. But when they feel like you're on their side and that you're not trying to push them into a lifestyle that just they feel like didn't or won't work for them, then, it's a little better.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, TJ. Your
Sure.
perspective is so breathtaking and so needed and so real that I feel like this conversation is going to most definitely empower someone. Even if it's just one single person, I know it's going to touch their heart and realize this is what I want to do because I'm capable of doing it, or this is what I shouldn't do because you know what, maybe I can't handle it yet. Maybe I need to take a step back and reflect on who I am first to see if I can really do this. And I think that if you're thinking about being a foster parent, I think you really need to take that into consideration. Your family, your environment, your work, your everything, because you do that when you have your own child, then you should do that when you're bringing in a whole new child into the
Yeah.
environment as well. I think everything, all the tips that you gave, everything was so real and honest. I'm so glad that you didn't cover code anything, because you know what, my show is not about cover coding anything. It's about exposing the realness of what it is. And I
Yeah.
think society cover codes this foster system too much, the adoption system too much, where people have this facade. Is either they are too scared to even put their toe into the water, or they're too willing to, and then they get bombarded and they feel attacked and overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's an equal medium there that not a lot of people talk about, and I think you found.
Oh, thanks.
And,
I know
and I
going
and
real
I
quick,
thank you
but
for that.
I just wanted to share when Noelle was in her early 20s, I said to her, I am sorry I wasn't the parent you wanted. And she looked at me and said, yeah, you were not the parent I wanted, but you're the parent I needed.
Oh, that would have made me broke out in tears.
Oh, it
Oh my
did. It did.
goodness.
So, it took
Oh my
a
goodness.
long while. It was a very difficult process, but there she is.
Oh, that's a blessing. I'm so glad I had this had was able to have this conversation with you, and just to be able to meet you so that I can pick your mind, because man, you seem like a pure soul, and
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad that you were able to foster your home to other people and just give them that hope again, give them that love again, and give them that reassurance that not everybody's bad, because that's the bad thing. You never know who you're going to deal with as a foster parent. They could be corrupt. They may be perfect on paper, but in their mind, they could be horrible individuals. That's
Mhm.
something that these children go into without even knowing either, and it's a scary process for them as well. It's terrifying. But if you guys want to know more or want to hear DJ's podcast, go check it out. I have a link on my website with her beautiful photo so that
Oh,
you can find out everything about DJ. And go check out and listen to her if you're wondering about some parenting tips. I listened to her podcast, and she has some great advice out there. Me being a new parent, I was listening. I was like, oh, let me write that down.
well, good.
So you never know what you're gonna find. But you guys take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye.